I'm joined now by James Bezan. He is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence. James Bezan, good morning, and welcome back to the House.
Thanks for having me on, Evan.
All right. Can you reconcile how the Prime Minister on September 30th says there will not be accompanying, and now the Defence Minister is saying, of course there's accompanying? It sounds to me starkly different. How do you reconcile the two?
Look, I think we heard quite vividly from General Lawson when he was at committee that we are not accompanying in battle. And I think that's what everybody always is getting confused. We are there advising, assisting, training. We're doing commanding. We're doing military planning. And when our forces came under fire and they defended themselves and had to fire back and eliminate those threats, they were up there doing military planning. They were scoping out where Iraqi security forces and the Kurdish Peshmerga were going to be taking their next operations.
The problem is most Canadians understood a company to be with someone going to the front lines, and they're contrasting that with what our coalition partners in the U.S. have done. They've been very explicit here, and I'll read you what the Secretary of Defense's office sent to us. Quote, "We have been very clear that U.S. advisors are removed from actual or expected combat situations as part of our advise and assist mission. Their movements are carefully planned in advance, approved at the highest level, with risks identified and mitigated in order to ensure they are not inadvertently put into combat situations." They're making sure their soldiers are not there. Ours were clearly there. Why do we have a different mission protocol than them?
I can tell you that I'm not aware of all the operations of our allies that are part of this coalition. I read with interest Matthew Fisher's article in National Post this week, where he made reference to both American Special Operation Forces and British SAS forces. So,
so you're saying they may be on the front lines?
Well, Matthew Fisher definitely has some intel that he's reporting on. I found it interesting. But
can you confirm? Are there special forces there?
I'm not aware personally of anything that the Americans or any of our other allies are doing with their Special Operation Forces. But I'm very proud of what our Special Operation Forces have done as part of Operation Impact. And
the question is, does advise and assist mean something differently than it did on September 30th? And then it means, say, in other words, when Canadians said, look, we're going to train people, that was what the mission was. Now we're going to go to the front lines and we may be in harm's way. If that's the mission, okay, but should the government have been more explicit about that?
And we were, right from the get-go. Whenever I've been on your panels and talking with Canadians, I've said right from the get-go, as the Minister has, as the Prime Minister has, is that advise and assist also means helping with reconnaissance, it means helping with military planning, it means training, but it's a big ominous activity that they're involved in, but it doesn't involve combat. And I think we saw from General Lawson a very good explanation of what combat is, and what our forces, when they had to be forced to fire back, is because they were in positions that got fired upon.
Well, I'll tell you, when the Minister of Defense says, of course we accompany, and the Prime Minister says we don't, it sounds like they're different. But let's get to what General Lawson said, because he talked about this. And let me play you a clip. I'm trying to also parse this because Canadians are trying to get a clear picture of what's going on. Here's General Lawson.
About 80% of the time we're back in classrooms with them. The way that evolution that we've spoken about has happened is they are now through those basic skills that the Minister outlined that they've been involved in, and now looking at the lay of the land with an idea of putting pressure on ISIL. We in no way put our Special Operations Troop anywhere near where we believe they will come under fire, and that's why, even though they've spent what's been referred to as 20% of the time up forward, there have only been 3 indications of fire that came to bear. So although the risk is low, and we continue to think it's low in that role, it is not zero.
Okay, so we in no way put our Special Forces troops anywhere near where we believe they will come under fire. Well, they did come under fire 3 times. So did you have bad intel? How did they go to a place where they weren't supposed to be?
And that's the questions that we're still looking for. And I'm not in a position that I can answer them either. All 3 situations, it's unfortunate that
it's a mistake. So now,
but again, you can't always know where the enemy is, especially when you look at the land that they're fighting in. So they're up there planning, advising, and assisting the Peshmerga and Iraqi security forces. And it wasn't unfortunate.
They're at the front lines. They're tagging targets for the CF-18s and other coalition aircraft. They're there 20% of the time. How can you reasonably not expect them to be in harm's way if they're doing that kind of activity? Is it disingenuous to suggest that you're surprised that they came under fire?
No, I think we always said right from the start, this was a low-risk mission, but it's not a no-risk mission. So there is things that are going to change. There is going to be offenses that are going to be launched by ISIL that are going to be unpredictable, and I suspect that's what happened in these three situations, that they were unpredictable. And so, you're not going to have the Iraqi security forces or the Kurds being able to get all the intel that you need to conduct yourself safely. Our special forces understand that. You use the term, General Lawson saying, in the evolving situation, it's progress, and it's been positive. And what we're seeing now is that the Iraqi...
evolution creep? I mean,
no, not at all.
Because this is the issue for the opposition is trust.
Yeah.
They're concerned that this creeps first from advise and assist, then to accompany, then to some kind of combat. And next thing we know, we're in a very different situation.
Look, if we're going to be moving people into roles where there's going to be combat, we're going to be taking over a lot more equipment and a lot more troops, and we're not. We're capped at 69. That's only enough special forces to go out there, the special operations, to do the advise and assist role that we expect of them. They have to work underneath the mandate that the Parliament gave them. Right. General Lawson was very explicit on that.
So what's the strategy? One of the lessons from Afghanistan, the U.S. involvement in Iraq, Canada's involvement in Libya, is you can have effective military tactics, but you don't have a clear overall strategy to fix the problem. What is the overall strategy which might indicate how deeply involved Canada might get? What is it?
And again, this is where the coalition is working together and in concert.
But it doesn't sound like there's a simple strategy.
This is not a simple strategy. And we said right from the get-go that there is going to be a long, drawn-out process here, not just in the defeat of ISIL, but also how do we make sure that these states are stable in the long term.
Is Canada considering entering the fight against ISIS after the 6-month deadline into Syria?
At this point in time, not at all. But we know that ISIL is functioning on both sides and that members of the coalition are active in Syria as well.
Last question. We know that General Lawson was in Iraq. He met with the leader of the Kurds and the Peshmerga. They asked for lethal support, lethal weapons, not just non-lethal weapons, and including light armored vehicles, the LAV vehicles. Is Canada considering supplying lethal weaponry and or light armored vehicles? We
take all these requests under careful consideration, and we'll look at it in a very responsible manner.
But we're not ruling out supplying lethal weapons.
We're definitely considering all requests. We want to ensure the Kurds, Peshmerga, are successful in their fight against ISIL.
James Bezan, Parliamentary Secretary to the Defence Minister, thanks for being here this morning.
Thanks for having me on the show.